Hello and welcome to part 6 of my Unity 3D tutorial for beginners. Last time we started creating a collectible item object that our player can pick up. Give it a couple of animations and a basic script that allows the player to collect it. This time around we'll be adding some other special effects and aesthetics as well as improving our collection script. By the end of this video we will have a collectible prefab that you can simply drag and place throughout your level. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's get right into it. So far, we've used a bland white 3D cube to represent our collectible, so let's go onto the asset store and find something a bit more interesting. Here is a free package of low poly gems, to which I'll send a link in the description. You'll need to log into your Unity account, click Add to My Assets, and click Accept. An option above will appear, allowing you to open it in Unity. It'll open your package manager window in your project. For low poly gems, and in the top right, you can click Import. It'll ask you which assets you'd like to import, and just agree to import all of them. Now, there will be a low poly gems folder in your assets folder to which you can navigate to the prefabs folder and see that there are prefabricated game objects of all of the gems. We can delete our old cube item object, drag in the green stone gem object and name it item, and then drag it onto the collectible object as a child and setting its transform position to 0, 0, 0. We have to name the child object item or else the animation won't recognize it. If you press play, you can see that the gemstone takes the place of our cube and has the same animations. Next, let's add a particle effect that appears when we collect the gem. Let's right-click on our collectible object, go to Effects, and choose Particle System. This creates a particle emission system that is attached to our collectible item. Since this will only be playing briefly before the object is destroyed, let's set the duration to 1 and change the X rotation to -90, such that the particles will rise into the air. Next, check the Velocity over Time tab and set the Z value to 15. For orbital X, that will cause the particles to swirl around the center. Click the Size over Lifetime tab and choose a preset that will cause the particles to shrink over time. As you can see, the particles get smaller as they go up. You can also change the color if you'd like. I decided to go with a slightly yellow hue. Once you've configured the particles to look the way that you'd like, we can save them as a prefab by dragging the particle system from our hierarchy into our project window. Once we've done that, we can delete the particle system from our scene, as we'll be changing our script to instantiate this particle effect once the item is collected. We can obtain a reference to our prefab by defining a public game object called particles at the top of our class. To make it appear, we can go down into our if statement and add instantiate particles at our current transform. This will add the particles as a child of our collectible object as we had it before. Once the game object is destroyed, all of its children, including the particle system, will also be destroyed. Save the script, go back into the editor, and drag our particle system prefab into the particle slot. Now, if we press play, particles will appear when we pick up our collectible. If we exit play mode, we can also create a prefab from our gem collectible object, which will allow us to drag and drop multiple collectible items into this scene and any other new scenes we create. Notice that any prefab shows up as blue in our hierarchy, and we can drop some in our scene and spread them along the plane. What's also convenient is that if you edit the prefab itself and save the changes, those changes will be applied to all the existing prefabs in your scenes. Let me exit play mode and delete the other copies real quick. Now, if you remember, there were 6 different gem prefabs from our low poly gems package. So we probably don't want all of our gems to look like the green one. What we can do is modify our script such that it will randomly choose among these gems for each collectible prefab. We can define a public array of game objects called gems by putting a pair of brackets after the data type. This essentially acts like a sequence or list of game objects, which will be each of those gem prefabs in our low poly gem pack. We can save our script, go back to the Unity editor, and populate our list by going to the collectible script, going to the gems dropdown by clicking the arrow, and clicking plus to add our 6 gem entry game objects. Then you can drag each of them in any order. The order doesn't matter since we'll be selecting them randomly. Let's go back into our script and go into the start method. We'll declare a game object called child, which will be an instantiation of one of the randomly selected gem prefabs. We can do this by indexing the gems array at a random index from 0 up to the length of our list, -1. Since, like in most programming languages, indexing arrays starts at 0 and we have 6 gem prefabs. So we'll want to randomly choose an index from 0 to 5. However, we'll generalize it to length -1 in case you're using a set of prefabs that has more or less than 6. And we'll set the transform of the child to be the transform of the parent object, which is just transform. As I mentioned earlier, the child game object needs to be named item for our animator to work, so we'll set the child's name to item. If we save this script and play our game, you'll see that the gem is now red, as it was randomly selected among our list of prefabs. However, it does not rotate. This is because the gem item prefab is instantiated after the game starts, even though it's mentioned in the start method. We have to rebind the animator by using getComponent to obtain its reference and calling rebind. Since we reference the animator multiple times, it's better to store it as a private variable instead of calling getComponent animator multiple times. We can declare an animator named animator and define it as getComponent animator from our collectible object inside of the start method. Now we can just replace any statement that has getComponent animator with just animator. Lastly, rebind is a method, so make sure to put parentheses after it. Now when we save the script and press play in our editor, the randomly chosen prefab will have animations. Now there's a couple other issues we have left to fix. One is that it's kind of hard to see what the size of the collectible is in our editor unless it's selected, because all you have to see is the audio source icon. What we can do is select the collectible, go to the inspector and click add a component, and then search for mesh filter. From there, we can select the built-in Unity sphere model from our assets. However, we still can't see the sphere yet, and that's because we have to add another component called mesh renderer. Once you do this, the sphere will look pink because it has not been assigned a material yet. So we can go into our materials folder, right-click create, and choose to create a new material. I'm going to name the material collectible and give it a blue hue. I'm going to make it see-through by changing the rendering mode to transparent and reducing the A alpha value. Then we can apply the material by dragging it onto our sphere. Just to see how it looks, we can duplicate this collectible object and place a few in our scene and hit play. But now the spheres actually cover our gems, which we clearly don't want. However, it's a pretty simple fix. We can go back into our script and set enable for the mesh renderer to false in the start method. We can write the statement getComponent meshRenderer.enabled is equal to false. This will essentially turn off the sphere once the game starts. Now when we save the script and try playing again, the gems appear as they should. Now there's one last problem that shows up, which is a bug that happens if you touch the item, back away while it's still playing its animation, and touch it again before it disappears. The game will think you've collected it twice. And the reason that that's happening is because this collider is still active. Similarly to how we turned off the object's sphere mesh renderer in the start method, we can turn off the object's collider when it's collected by going to the if statement in onTriggerEnter and using getComponent sphere collider and setting enabled equal to false. Now, after implementing these changes, you'll no longer be able to interact with the object once it's been collected. Now, since we've made changes to our collectible prefab, we can delete the duplicates from our hierarchy and drag the parent collectible object onto the prefab in our assets folder to override it. And now you can drag this prefab into your scene to scatter collectibles across your level. And there you have it. We have finished implementing the basic functionality of a collectible item in our game. It has a 3D model, a couple of animations, as well as audio and visual effects. And we fixed some bugs in our collection script. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you'll be notified about when my next video comes out, where we'll talk about adding a camera controller. Make sure to subscribe for more STEM content, and I will see you in the next video.